This is the Northern Alliance Radio Network, the longest-running conservative talk show in the Twin Cities.
It's great to be back in Minnesota today.
Political analysis of the good, the bad, and the outright crazy. Now, here's your headline act, Mitch Berg.
Absolutely wild times that we're living in. Unprecedented. And I think the weirdest thing about it is, or one of the most provocative things to realize, is that all of us feel like this is new. All of us feel like this is a change. This is a shift. This is a moment. This is an inflection point that we're experiencing. But the fact of the matter is, it's not that the world has changed. It's that we just realized it had changed. The world changed a while ago. It changed a while ago, and not all at once. But just like that analogy of the frog in the boiling pot, once those bubbles start, that's the status shift where you're like, oh, I didn't even realize it was warm in here. I didn't even realize it was getting hot. Now it's boiling? Yes, it is. AM 1280, The Patriot. Intelligent Radio. My name's Walter Hudson, sitting in for Mitch Berg today on the Northern Alliance Radio Network. You can join me. The studio line is 651-289-4488. You can find us at AM 1280 The Patriot. I am just overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. You know, I have done radio in the past. I had a show for 3 years. And there's this kind of standard that you prepare. You spend at least half as much time as you're going to be on the air prepping for what you're going to say. Because the worst possible thing that can happen in radio, the absolute worst possible thing, is dead air, right? Like you run out of things to talk about, you don't know what to say, you don't know where to go next, and there's silence over the airwaves. And that's what everybody panics about is, am I going to run out of things to talk about? So you got to come in here with a stack, 50 pages high of every headline, of everything going on locally and across the nation to make sure that you got something to talk about. Today, I operate under a significantly different burden. The burden today is, what do I choose to not talk about? What do I choose to exclude from the conversation? And also, what's the order of priority? What's the most important thing for me to be saying on the air right now? What do I need to make sure I get out of the way so that I don't miss it? That's the burden that I'm currently operating under. Let's start here. Let's start with some solution talk. I mean, I don't think I need to sit here and read headlines to you about Charlie Kirk, the reaction to it, the abhorrent behavior of not just yahoos online, but people with positions of status, right? We've seen doctors, nurses, teachers, professors, elected officials, some of my colleagues in the House of Representatives, some of my colleagues in the state Senate say absolutely god-awful, abhorrent things. So I don't think I need to tick you through. I'm sure you've been seeing that. Let's cut to from the diagnosis or from the triage of the symptoms to talking about what to do about it. What's the solution? Well, the solution is a shift in mindset. A shift in mindset for us. A shift in mindset for our movement. A shift in mindset for our entire society. And that means recognizing what time it is and recognizing what the problem is. The problem is that we have a disordered society. We have a disordered society because we have a disordered culture, and we have a disordered culture because we have disordered thought patterns and inaccurate perceptions of what's going on around us. There's this thing called the social contract. And we don't talk about it a lot because it's not something that we have to talk about or need to talk about. What the social contract is, it's not written down anywhere. It's the list of things that we think we can take for granted and that we should be able to take for granted. It's those precepts, that kind of unwritten code of conduct that we all abide by, or at least thought we all abided by, and that the list of presumptions that we make when we go into a conversation, or when we go into a public space, or when we go to work, when we leave our homes, when we interact with our family, the list of things that we think we can expect. One of those things, one of the clauses in the unwritten social contract, is that we don't want to see each other dead. That human life has inherent value, and that it would be a tragedy if one of our fellow human beings' life was to end. And we don't just apply this to our friends. We don't just apply this to the folks who like us. This has been in civilized, in an ordered society, in Western civilization. This clause within the social contract applies to literally everybody, even abhorrent people. Even a guy who gets justifiably killed in a police encounter, or somebody who breaks into a house and their life ends as a result because somebody executed their right to self-defense. Even then, you might be glad that the threat was stopped. You might celebrate the fact that you're still alive. You might have some sense of satisfaction that justice was served. But you still recognize the death of that person as a tragedy. They may have brought it upon themselves through their actions against others, by violating other people's rights objectively, but it's still a bad thing. It would still be better if they were alive. We value their life. That's this clause in the social contract. And it plays out in other ways too. I had an interview with a Minnesota Reformer reporter yesterday morning, and I told her, I'm like, when you called me up and asked me to do this interview, there were two things that we needed to agree on. When are we going to do it, and where are we going to do it? That's it. When and where. One thing we didn't have to talk about, one thing we didn't have to come to agreement on is, hey, by the way, just so I know, just so I can put it in my notes, are you planning on killing me tomorrow? And beyond that, even if you yourself aren't planning to do so, if someone else were to, are you going to stand up and clap? Are you going to call up my wife and laugh at her? Those are things that we didn't have to agree upon before that meeting, because the two of us in that instance still subscribe to this social contract. We still subscribe to the clause that says human life has inherent value, whether you agree with me or not, whether we're on the same side or not. And so we don't even need to talk about it. What we need to understand, and I'm not just talking to Republicans, I'm not just talking to conservatives, this is not a political point. This is a reality point. That social contract has been broken. And it was broken a while ago. We just now realized it because the bubbles in that pot, that with the frog in it, just started to pop up. So we're just now recognizing that the social contract has been broken, but it was broken a while ago. And so we now live in a world where you can't assume that the people that you're interacting with value your life to any degree. And just to clarify here, I'm not talking about a level of naivete where we previously thought that nobody was a criminal, or that we previously thought that nobody commits crime or nobody commits fraud, or everybody has good character. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we had categories. The category was criminals, right? People who are criminals. We know that they've broken the social contract. That's what being a criminal is. But what we've now realized is that the people who aren't classified as criminals, the people who have status and standing in our society, that they have broken the social contract and would celebrate our deaths and would mock our wife and kids if we died. People, again, who are teachers, the people who educate our children, perform medical procedures on us, and write our laws are among the categories of people who quite apparently, as expressed over the past week or so since the death of Charlie Kirk, would celebrate our death. That's the reality that we're in. And so that changes things. That changes things pretty significantly. Back in June, when we saw the horrendous political assassination of Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband, and the shooting of my colleague, Senator Hoffman, and his wife, we had a conversation after that. As an electorate, as a state, as a public, we had a conversation about, gee whiz, how do we bring down the temperature? How do we tone down the rhetoric? How do we unify? How do we kumbaya? We ain't having that conversation today because we can't. It's not possible. There's an order of operation to how these things work. Before I can talk to you about turning the temperature down, before I can talk to you about unifying and coming together and being a community and just basic, like functioning, just basic functioning, before I can do that, there first has to be order. Order. There's a reason why, you go into a courtroom, somebody gets out of hand, the judge bangs the gavel and says, order in the court, order in the court. There's a reason why in the legislature, if somebody breaks the rules that govern the parliamentary procedure, somebody raises a point of order. That word means something, and it's important. Because if you don't have order, then you cannot proceed. It's not possible for the trial, in the case of the court, to proceed without order. It's not possible for the legislative process in the House or the Senate to proceed if you don't have order. And that principle applies literally everywhere. This is why we have traffic lights, okay? This is why we have speed limits. This is why we have any law whatsoever, in order to establish the order necessary to proceed peacefully, to accomplish literally anything at all. So the task before us, and again, it's not a task for Republicans, it's not a task for conservatives, it's a task for normies. It's a task for the category of people who had been subscribing to that social contract and want to see it restored. Our task is we must restore order. We'll get back into it when we return. Join the conversation, 651-289-4488. My name's Walter Hudson, filling in for Mitch Berg, AM 1280, The Patriot. AM 1280, The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. Northern Alliance, I've been listening to this stuff since, I'm sorry to make you feel old, Mitch and Brad and the rest of the gang, since I was a kid, quite literally, since I was in high school, listening to this stuff, and in envy of, I want to do that someday. I want to do what those guys do. I want to do what Mark Levin does. I want to do what Joe Souchere does, right? And here I am, proud to be an American. What a great country we live in. AM 1280, The Patriot, intelligent radio. You can join the conversation, 651-289-4488. Find us at am1280thepatriot.com. So, picking up where we left off, I was talking about the solution to the problem that we find ourselves in. We've gotten to this point in society where we've all been the frog in the boiling pot, or the pot that's approaching boiling, and the bubbles just started to pop up. The bubbles are hard to ignore. Like you're that frog and you're completely oblivious to how hot it's getting in that pot. As soon as those bubbles start, you notice, right? Oh, look at that. Well, there's another one. Oh, now there's a bunch of them. Something might be afoot here. That's the place we find ourselves, is that the social contract has been broken. Our friends and neighbors and family members and the people who educate our kids and perform medical procedures on us and write our laws, there is some percentage of those who would dance on our graves. And what that signals is a highly disordered society. And order is absolutely essential in order to proceed. You know, the light needs to turn green before you can go. And so the task that we find ourselves with is reordering society, restoring order. We have to restore order. We've talked a lot about restoring normalcy in recent years, and that's a goal too. But I think more fundamentally, more specifically, what we should be saying and what we mean by restoring normalcy is restoring order. And that crosses every sector, that crosses every category of our social engagement in our society and every institution. It's not just our government. It's not just how we conduct ourselves in the public discourse. It's not just our criminal law. And there's a lot of work to do in all those areas, believe me, and we'll talk about them here today. Certainly a lot of work to do when it comes to holding criminals accountable and holding the people accountable who are organizing to disorder our society. Like they have the explicit mission of, they'll tell you to your face that they want to dismantle the United States. They'll tell you to your face that they're a traitor to your country, and then they'll have the audacity to use the laws of your country to set up an organization in order to effect that treason. And we just go, oh, free speech, freedom of association. I guess you can just do that. I guess you can just be an open traitor and we're not going to do anything about it. That is a disordered status that we have allowed ourselves to fall into. Let's go to the phones. Again, you can join us at 651-289-4488. We'll talk to Mike in Minneapolis.
Yeah, you're a spectacular voice. I hope you make it to national office. But my question is why don't you and your colleagues connect the dots between today's progressive socialists and the National Socialists of Germany and the fascists of Italy? Because they look so similar. And the irony is the more they become, the more militant they become, the more that's what they look like. And I just wish you and your colleagues would emphasize that more.
I very much appreciate that thought. I'll expound upon it offline. Thanks for the call, Mike. I'm trying, man. I'm trying, right? Like that's the task I'm engaged in right here, right now on this air. Because you're 100% correct. One of the weapons that has been utilized against us has been a totally contrived and inaccurate political spectrum. And the language that we use to talk about it. We talk about the left and the right, the far left and the far right. And that whole thought process, that whole way of thinking, methodology of thought, is a smokescreen that keeps us from perceiving the actual political spectrum, the actual reality. Because what it does is it fosters this idea, and I talked about this the last time I was on this air, fosters this idea that the good place to be, the healthy place to be, is somewhere in the middle. It's good to be a centrist. It's good to be a moderate. It's good to be, to not ruffle people's feathers too much, to not rock the boat. You don't want to be, you certainly don't want to be categorized as far right. Oh, my Lord, far right? That's extreme. And we don't want to be extreme. Extreme is disordered. Extreme is dangerous. Extreme is something we need to be concerned about. And that whole paradigm, that whole prism of thought has kept us from recognizing what our actual categories are. So let me give you the real political spectrum. All right. The real political spectrum, if you want to look at it as like a linear line, on one side of it, and I don't care if you call it left or right or up or down or, up, backwards and forward, you can call it whatever you want. On one end of the spectrum, you have civilization. You have an ordered society. You have personal liberty. You have individual rights. You have a republic. You have the capacity to live your life according to your values, to express your beliefs, your opinions, to practice your religion without fear, because you have a rational expectation and a reasonable expectation that if somebody colors outside the lines of that order, they are out. They're done. We're not gonna deal with it. We're not going to allow somebody to disrupt that order. We're not going to allow somebody to violate our rights. We're not going to allow somebody to do something that makes it impossible for the rest of us to function. And there are a variety of ways you can go about doing that. It's not just through the criminal law. It's also through social censure. And we've seen a lot of that in the past few weeks or a few days and the week and a half, where these folks with positions of status and stature and influence, teachers, late night talk show hosts. We'll get into talking about Jimmy Kimmel in a bit here. These people who have status, who are nonetheless willing to color outside the lines, face social consequences. They lose their job. They should also lose their friends. They should be anathema to their family. They should be thought of as a shame to the name. My God. A Hudson doesn't do that. A Hudson doesn't say that. I am ashamed of you, family member, for engaging in that behavior. And to your point regarding the connecting the dots between so-called progressive socialism and fascism, indeed, those things are on the other end of the spectrum. There's the spectrum where we have civilization and order and peace and liberty. There's only one mechanism through which you have that, and that's a constitutional republic that is rooted in the principles of individual rights. That's the only way to do it, and that's how it manifests politically. Economically, it's capitalism. Because if you're going to have an economic system, if you want to think of it in those terms, a simpler way to put it is, if you're going to exchange value for value, if you're going to be able to keep what you produce, if you're going to be able to do those things, then the mechanisms through which those things are done manifest as capitalism. So the other end of the spectrum is anything that impedes that, which includes socialism, communism, fascism, any form of authoritarianism, totalitarianism, theocracy, right? All of those things belong on the other end of the spectrum. And part of the reason why we have failed or have had such a difficult time trying to combat the enemies of our civilization is because we've allowed ourselves to get confused about everything that I just said. We break down the categories we try to split up these two vile groups, socialists and fascists, and pretend that they're the extremes and we need to be somewhere in the middle. No, they are collectively the enemies of civilization. We need to categorize them as such, and we need to eject them from society, whether that means criminal consequences for criminal behavior or social consequences for reprehensible expression. In the United States of America, in 2025, it should be unacceptable. You should not be able to function within our society as a declared socialist. It should be so anathema to the rest of us that to say you're a socialist means you have no friends, no job, no status, no influence, disqualified. That's where we need to get to. 651-289-4488, AM 1280 The Patriot. My name's Walter Hudson, filling in for Mitch Berg. Intelligent Radio, AM 1280thepatriot.com. AM 1280, The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. My name is Walter Hudson, sitting in for Mitch Berg. It's a pleasure to be with you here on this beautiful Saturday. By the way, I'll have the details later. I don't have them in front of me at the moment. But there's at least 3 vigils going on tonight in honor of Charlie Kirk. One of them's going to be in Lakeville. I'm going to be there. I'll get you the details here later on in the program. And we'll talk. I mean, we got people calling in, so I want to have those conversations. But I want to talk specifically about like the dynamics of even trying to have a memorial vigil in the United States of America at this moment. The concerns that we reasonably and rationally must have in order to honor the life of someone who was murdered. It's a pretty abhorrent scenario that we find ourselves in. 651-289-4488 is the number to join the conversation. Let's go to Dan in Inver Heights.
Yes, hello, Walter. Thank you for everything that you do. I have a question about the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan. There's an audio clip going around. At least I've heard it multiple times on different broadcasts, talk radio broadcasts, of the mayor in Dearborn wanting to rename a street, I believe in Dearborn, after the Hezbollah terrorist group. And one of the citizens in that community protested, saying that it would be inappropriate, and the mayor called him out for Islamophobia. Do you have any suggestion on how to deal with a mayor, who seems to be, who is apparently promoting Hezbollah terrorists? Oh, yes.
I have many suggestions for how to deal with that. I appreciate the call, Dan. I'll address it offline. Again, 651-289-4488 if you want to join the conversation. And he's right. It wasn't just, and by the way, just to give a little bit of personal context as an aside, I was born in Detroit, Michigan. I spent the first few years of my life living in Inkster and then Garden City. Garden City was just miles away from Dearborn. And I remember as a kid, everybody thought Dearborn was bougie. Everybody thought Dearborn was like, those are the cake eaters over there in Dearborn. It was like Woodbury or Edina or Maple Grove, right? Like that. We thought to ourselves, that's where the fancy people live. And look at what it's become now. You have video, and you can see the video of what this guy's talking about. In fact, it's on my X feed. Of just masses of people congregated to celebrate terrorism, to celebrate Hamas, to celebrate people who are objectively terrorists, not just rhetorically, not just, I'm not just saying like for rhetorical effect. Oh, that sounds like terrorism. No, they've been designated as terrorists. And we have an American city where the people who are elected to office want to name streets after them. So, though, and also to clarify, it wasn't just in what he was referring to, what the caller was referring to, Dan, when this citizen, this resident of Dearborn, went into a city council meeting to protest the fact that his city was contemplating naming a street in his neighborhood after a terrorist who would love to see him dead. Of the things that you could go before your city council to complain about, recycling schedule, noise in the park, the lights in the baseball field being on too late. Like, of the things you could complain about, hey, I heard you guys want to name a street after somebody who wants to kill me, is pretty high up on the list. Like, that's outside the lines of what you would typically think that you're going to have to go to your city council and complain about. And the response that guy got was not just being called an Islamophobe. That was the least of it. What he was told by his elected official was, you need to get out of this city. You don't belong here. Can you imagine Think about the audacity that it takes for an elected official to look at a constituent and say, you need to get out of this jurisdiction, specifically because you have something to say about us naming a street in your neighborhood after somebody who would love to see you dead and would do everything they could to affect it. That's where we're at right now in this moment in the United States of America. So to the caller's question, what do you do about it? Well, you arrest him. You imprison him. That mayor should be drugged today, should have been drugged days ago, right out of the city council chambers, placed in cuffs, and charged with federal crimes and put on a pathway to spend the rest of his life in federal prison. And on this basis, there's many bases on which you could do this. First of all, openly supporting a designated terror organization. That's number one. Number two, violating your oath to the Constitution, being a traitor, engaging in treason. And then also, and I think that this is the vehicle that is going to potentially could be the most effective vehicle for fighting back against specifically this type of insurgency, is civil rights violations. That residents' civil rights were violated in those council chambers. And it also, by the very nature of what they were there to discuss, you have a conspiracy to deny people their civil rights. What we need to do is we need to get our head out of our rears, stop trying to think about, how do we make nice in order to win the next election? How do we get people to like us, to think that we're reasonable and moderate? We need to start thinking about how do we use the institutional power that we have to restore order to society. And part of restoring order to society is most definitely prosecuting people who are conspiring to dismantle our country right out in the open and have no hesitation to say it to your face. No shame, not even trying to mask it, openly violating your civil rights, openly conspiring to violate them more. If we're not willing in this moment, and thank God for Donald J. Trump, thank God for J.D. Vance, thank God that we are currently led in this country by guys who know what time it is, and you hear them saying it, because they are saying what I am saying. Now, I'm less impressed by the saying of it than I will be of the doing of it. Again, this guy, the fact that this guy, this mayor, is walking around free and governing an American city is absolutely abhorrent. He should have been drug out of those chambers and televise it, right? Like, bring the press, make sure everybody can see it. Drag him out in cuffs, in shame, literally drag him, right? Like, let's make a show of it. This is what happens to you when you conspire against us. This is what happens to you when you work to break down the order of our society, to dismantle Western civilization, to plot against the United States of America. Look, everybody, this is what happens. Let's go to Joe in Minneapolis. Hey, Joe, I suppose I didn't give you a whole lot of warning that I was going to bring you up, but are you still on the line?
Sure I am.
Yeah. What can I do for you?
Hello, is this Governor Hudson?
The last part's right. The last part's right.
A better office. There's something that's been, and I think you've addressed this a little bit in the past, is these Minnesota, but other places, but you can look it up on the IRS website, but these nonprofit millionaires, these people who have, majority government-funded charities or nonprofits, and they're paying themselves like the last mayor of St. Paul, Chris Coleman. He moved down to a St. Paul chapter, Habitat for Humanity, and that was years ago. he lost the governor's race. He moved down there. He's paying himself well over $300,000 a year. And this is what I could look up and see. It was a majority government funded is where they get their money.
Well, and that's the problem. That second part is the problem, right? Like I don't care if you form a nonprofit and then you go around to donors and you pitch them a business plan and say, listen, I want to do X, Y, and Z is pay myself $300,000 a year. Okay. Like if you can convince people to contribute to that project, God bless you. And I envy you and Godspeed. But the problem is the second thing you said, that these organizations are overwhelmingly funded, or at least substantially funded, by public tax dollars in the name of benevolence. Joe, I appreciate the call. We'll continue to address it. It drives me nuts. You had this past year, it was the CEO, I believe, of, or whoever the title of the chief executive of Second Harvest Heartland. Just a benevolent organization, right? Feeding people, ensuring that we have food banks and food shelves, and that work does get done. Don't get me wrong. It gets done and it is good work. But the problem is this gal who was running the joint was, and I might get the number wrong because I don't have it right in front of me, but it was somewhere in the vicinity of $750,000 every year. It might have been more than that. I mean, go look it up. It was an obscene number that she was getting paid for her salary to administer an organization that ostensibly exists to help people, to feed people. And again, if that's because she's does, because look, I'm not one of these people. I'm not like these folks on the left who are always pointing to executive pay and saying, oh, it's so obscene that a CEO gets paid whatever they get paid, because their business is private and the decision to pay them was made by a board, and that board represents the fiscal interest, the fiduciary responsibility of shareholders who voluntarily made the choice to buy shares in that company. And so it's all voluntary, which means that the value that executive is being paid is something that's recognized by the market. It's voluntary. People have come together collectively and voluntarily and agreed, we think this person is bringing this value to this role. But that's not what's happening in these nonprofits. What's happening in these nonprofits is they're coming to us down in St. Paul with their hand out. And they're doing it in an incredibly insidious way where they leverage benevolence and shame. Don't you want to help people? Don't you want to feed people? If you don't, you're a terrible person, and we're going to let everybody know about it. And the talking points for the Democrats are just laid out. They're simple. It's a script. You can just read off the script. Republicans hate the poor. Republicans don't want to feed people. But once that money actually gets to the nonprofit, they pay themselves $300,000 just for showing up. It's atrocious. 651-289-4488. When we come back, I want to, just because of that call, brings me to all of this news about fraud that we've heard in recent days. We'll get into it when we return. AM 1280, The Patriot.
Around the sun, what a beautiful dream that could flash.
AM 1280, The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. My name's Walter Hudson, proudly setting in for Mitch Berg this weekend, this Saturday, this beautiful day where later today there will be several vigils in honor of Charlie Kirk throughout the state of Minnesota. One of them is going to be in Lakeville. I'll have the details for you next hour as to where and when. I plan on being there myself. In fact, I'm scheduled to speak, and I anticipate a large crowd. So you might want to get there early. You might want to make sure that you have your logistics in order. You are able to find some place to park and have a bottle of water, and perhaps the have taken appropriate security measures. I'll leave it at that. Have taken appropriate security measures to ensure the safety of yourself and your loved ones who attend, as we engage in the audacity of trying to honor the life of a guy who went around talking to people. We gotta concern ourselves with our physical safety, because we have the audacity to go out in the public space and mourn the death of and celebrate the life of and honor the legacy of Charlie Kirk. That's where we're at in the United States of America. 651-289-4488. Let's talk to Carol in Minneapolis. Thanks for calling into the program, Carol.
Hi. I listened to our U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson's press conference on September 15th 2 times. Minnesota's in trouble with this fraud. He said when he saw some of this fraud, it took his breath away. And he said, we're in trouble, just the way he characterized it. So I just kind of want to hope that you're going to emphasize on it. I listened to it twice, and it's very serious. And I think the first step is we need to get rid of this administration. That has to go.
Yep.
That's the first thing that has to go, because we are in trouble. And Walter, I had to laugh when that caller said, Governor Hudson.
Sure.
But anyway,
well,
I'm really concerned.
But before I let you go, and we don't have enough time in this segment for me to fully address the astounding details and statements that were made by U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson earlier this week. I too watched through it multiple times. In fact, I have a video out on my socials where I break down the many things that he had to say, and I'll go through some of those same points here to the extent that I can throughout the rest of the segment and then into next hour. But I just want to ask you, as somebody who watched it a couple of times, what were like one or two of the most stunning statements that you heard from U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson?
Well, I heard the word iceberg.
Yeah.
And then I heard, and he said, you got to do something before it's too late. And I knew a couple things that he said. I knew he was serious. I mean, it's serious.
Yes, it's very, very serious.
And he said we can't prosecute our way out of it.
There you go. That was a big one. That was a big one. I appreciate the call, Carol. Thanks for calling in. The list of things he said, I mean, I'm going to have to pull up the transcript in order to really dig into it with you. But he dropped some of the most absolutely stunning statements that could come from a federal prosecutor in reference to the state in which you live and the government which you have elected. And indeed, one of those things was, we can't prosecute our way out of this problem. Later, he said, I could keep 1,000 prosecutors busy on fraud, just on fraud. I have 25, and only 5 of them are specifically assigned to fraud. So this guy is saying, and by the way, what was announced this week was 8 indictments, right? So they're building multiple cases. He said we have, that this is just the tip of the iceberg, that we're going to continue to be investigating there's going to be new announcements, new indictments coming in the weeks and months to come. He said all of that. And then he also said, by the way, we can't prosecute our way out of this problem because we don't have the resource. I could keep 1,000 prosecutors busy. And they obviously are working on multiple cases, each prosecutor. So the implication there is that there are thousands of potential cases of fraud. Another thing he said was that he actually said that our waivered services Medicaid programs here in the state of Minnesota are effectively just fraud programs. That it's a fraud program. That the majority of the dollars being taken out of your pocket and allocated to this benevolence. We talked last segment about the whole nonprofit scheme where they come in and pull on your heartstrings and say, oh, gee, don't you want to feed the kids, and don't you want to help the poor, and don't you want to get the homeless housed and all of this? That methodology is a big part of how this has all gone down. And so what he said was these programs that have been set up and the vast majority of the dollars going to them are going to fraud. Now, that is an indictment. That is an indictment of our system and the people responsible for it. And I say that cognizant of the fact that I myself am a sitting elected state representative. We all, to one degree or another, bear some responsibility for this, but some of us bear a whole lot more responsibility than others. And we'll get into it when we come back. Sean, stay on the line. We'll get to you first thing. 651-289-4488, AM 1280, The Patriot.
Yeah, you got satin shoes.
This is the Northern Alliance Radio Network, the longest-running conservative talk show in the Twin Cities.
It's great to be back in Minnesota today.
Political analysis of the good, the bad, and the outright crazy. Now, here's your headline act, Mitch Berg.
Vigils, celebrating, honoring, memorializing the life and legacy of Charlie Kirk will be occurring tonight. They're going to be happening in Ely, Victoria, and close here to this listenership in Lakeville. And I am going to be at that latter one. It is taking place at Casperson Park in Lakeville. So you can Google that. Casperson Park, and it starts at 7 o'clock. I would suggest getting there earlier than that. I just have a feeling, and I've heard some feedback that suggests that this is going to be big, that there's going to be quite a few people there. I'm scheduled to speak, and as you have no doubt noted, I have some things to say. My name is Walter Hudson, filling in for Mitch Berg on AM 1280 The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. You can join the conversation here at 651-289-4488. Sean from Minneapolis, thank you for holding over the break. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Walter. Just wanted to let you and your listeners know that even in Minneapolis, we are holding a vigil and a viewing of Charlie Kirk's funeral tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful.
At our headquarters.
Okay.
We are coming together and basically just holding each other's hands and getting through this moment as in the only way that we know how.
Well, and I know Sean, for those listening, and I have been to that headquarters in Minneapolis. It's a impressive facility that you guys have managed to cobble together for yourselves. And would you like to let people know where it is?
That would be at 707 North 3rd Street, Minneapolis, in the Warehouse District.
Fantastic.
Doors will be open at 11:30. I believe the service starts at noon, our time. Parking is, well, it's downtown parking.
Yeah, right.
It's the Nordic ramp on 3rd Street North is the most viable parking, and it's surprisingly inexpensive. So there is no charge for the event at our doors. It is simply open doors for anybody who cares to come in, view the funeral with us, and be respectful and show solidarity with one another.
Well, that's fantastic.
Over our mourning of this this needless death.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sean, for calling in and let us know that. Appreciate the call. And I myself will not be able to make it to that one because I'm going to be at one closer to home. I'm going to be at the St. Michael Theater with folks who are going to be watching live on the big screen the services for Charlie Kirk. And I'm going to bring my family. And you know what? What really gets my goat is that as I say that, as I sit here and tell you, hey, I'm going to be in Casperson Park at 7 o'clock tonight in Lakeville. And as I tell you, hey, I'm going to be at the St. Michael Theater tomorrow with my family at around 1 o'clock. I am cognizant of and have to be aware of the fact that I am telling people who potentially want to kill me and my family where we're going to be and when. That's a reality. And that reality, and by the way, this isn't, feel sorry for Walter. Like that's not the point I'm making, because guess what? Literally every other person, Sean, who just called in, he just told us where and when he's going to be tomorrow. The doors are going to be open to the public. You can join him to watch the memorial for Charlie Kirk. He's willing to put that out there. And every single person who shows up, yourself included, if you go to one of these events, is taking on that very same risk. And I don't think it is a breach of humility or decorum to be proud of that. To be proud of the fact that we're all willing to do that. That we will not walk in fear. We will walk in awareness. Okay, we will walk in situational awareness, and we will walk with, shall we say, a big stick. If anybody wants to get rowdy, but we're not going to walk in fear, because that's the way Charlie was, and that's the way America should be. That what we're doing tonight at these vigils and tomorrow, as we gather in public spaces to watch the memorial for Charlie Kirk and to honor his life and legacy, what we're doing is taking the first step in everything that I talked about last hour. Taking the first step of restoring order. Restoring order. See, that's the thing, is when things get disordered, when the judge has to bang the gavel and say order in the court, past a certain point, he's got to call on the bailiff, right? Past a certain point, if you're in a city council meeting and the mayor's banging that gavel and saying, order, we need order here, order in this room, we will have order, and you keep making a ruckus, sooner or later they got to bring in the sheriff. And that's the situation that we find ourselves in, metaphorically, is we collect, those of us who just by being willing to show up to a vigil, just by being willing to show up to a public viewing of the memorial that's going to take place for Charlie Kirk tomorrow, we are the bailiff. We are the sheriff. We are stepping into the breach to say, peacefully, non-violently, to declare we are here to restore the order that you tried to create or tried to disrupt, tried to destroy by shooting our friend, ally in the throat, in front of us. And so we should all be very proud of ourselves for being willing to do that. And another feeling that I have, along with pride, as I talk through that, of course, is incredibly righteous anger. Righteous anger. This is another thing. There are so many different ways in which I can talk about this problem of our society being disordered. And we're not going to have time today. 2 hours isn't long enough, right? Like, we're not going to have time today for me to go through all of the examples. But one of the ways in which our society has become disordered is in our own thinking, our culture, our language, and even inside of our own heads, how we think about things. One of the ways in which it's become disordered is we've allowed ourselves to buy into this concept that quote unquote negative emotions, anger, hatred, an abiding sense of that these are bad things. That they're just categorically bad. It's always bad to be angry. It's always bad to have hatred in your heart. It's just always bad, and you're supposed to just purge yourself of it in all circumstances, in all contexts, no matter what. By God, if somebody comes into your house and assaults your kids and your wife, and you better not feel any anger, buddy. You better not have any hatred in your heart for that person, because that means you're bad. That means you're the one with the problem. because you harbor anger. And of course, that's not true. That is a disordered way of thinking. It's completely disordered. That if you were to live your life by that thought process consistently for long enough, you're going to die. I mean, it's unhealthy to never be angry. It's unhealthy to never harbor hatred for something, because some things are hateful. Some things are worthy of despise. They are worthy of being reviled. That the desire of these insurgents within our midst, who are willing to organize for, cheer on, engage in violence against those with whom they disagree, that is vile, that is abhorrent, and they are vile and abhorrent for doing it. They are bad people. And it is okay to be angry at bad people doing bad things. It's okay to hate bad people who do bad things. That's okay. Now, what you do with that anger and that hatred is another matter, right? And this is, by the way, and I don't remember who, it might have been Charlie Kirk. In fact, I think it was Charlie Kirk who I first heard this from, and I've latched onto it, and I've said it many, many times. Meekness, which is a biblical concept, the meek shall inherit the earth. Meekness is not niceness. Meekness is not weakness. Meekness is not rolling over and letting them stab you to death. Like, that's not being meek. Those aren't the meek. Meekness is strength under control. It's actually impossible to be both meek and weak. That's not possible. If you're weak, then you're just weak. In order to be meek, M-E-E-K, weak, meek, it's a tongue twister now, but in order to actually be meek, you have to have the capacity to be dangerous. You see? You have to be, and this is something Jordan Peterson talks about, we need to be dangerous people, not violent people, not people who are going to initiate violence and get out of control and be disordered in our own right, but we need to be dangerous in the sense that we present a danger to those who would harm us. We present that danger to them. That's what security is. That's what an officer presence is. That's what a standing military is. The presentation of danger to those who would harm you. We need to be capable of that in a myriad of other ways, both actual and metaphorical, just as average citizens. And you don't need to be a big burly guy in order to do it. You know who does this the best? Mama Bear. Mama Bear. Mama Bear's dangerous. Okay. Forget about me, right? Like, you come after, if me and my wife are in the same space and you come at my kid, I won't be fast enough to beat her to you. Like, she'll win that race. It'll be astounding. And so, bringing this all back around to where it started. Don't feel bad about being angry. Don't feel bad about hating the atrocious behavior that we've seen from our fellow Americans in the past week. Don't feel bad for hating them for that behavior. But what you do with those feelings, what you do with those negative emotions, is you exercise meekness. You keep it under control, and you apply it to the activities that are going to restore the order in your society. You use it as fuel to drive you to accomplish the things and to make the moves that are necessary to restore the order so that you can protect yourself, your family, and your society. 651-289-4488. My name's Walter Hudson, filling in for Mitch Berg, AM 1280, The Patriot. AM 1280, The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. My name's Walter Hudson, sitting in for Mitch Berg. We do intelligent radio here. That's how things work here. You can find us at am1280thepatriot.com. You can join the conversation. This is probably the most callers I have seen whenever I've come in here to either be a guest or guest host a program. People are fired up. 651-289-4488. Also getting messages offline in solidarity with the conversation that we're having here today. And it warms my heart. And it's a breath of fresh air, because I got to tell you, this has not been, I mean, I'm talking tough, but I'm a human being. This has not been easy to shoulder. I don't think it has been for any of us. There's a uniqueness to my position simply because I'm an elected official and an outspoken one at that. I would imagine that I'm, if not number one, pretty high up on the list of people who, if there is a militant wing of lefties in this state who are building a list of who they're going to go after, I'm probably on that list for sure, and probably high up on it. And so, bearing that burden of walking into a committee room at the legislature, walking from my car to the building, being at my house, being away from my house. That's something I have to, when I'm here right now, and because it's live radio, people know that I'm not at my house. I have to think about that. I have to wonder what's going on at home. And by the way, I have the means to know what's going on at home, in case you're getting any ideas. And that is an incredibly unhealthy thing to have to bear, to burden that. But the comments that I'm getting from you guys, the fact that we're coming together tonight in Ely, in Mankato, in Lakeville, again, 7 o'clock tonight, Casperson Park, in Lakeville, vigil for Charlie Kirk. Tomorrow, in Minneapolis, at GOP headquarters in Minneapolis, live streaming the memorial for Charlie Kirk. In St. Michael, my neck of the woods, St. Michael Cinema, getting together on the big screen and watching the memorial for Charlie Kirk. The fact that we're all willing to do those things, not recklessly, but without fear, and that it comes from this place of love and commitment to restoring order and commitment to each other and to the legacy that Charlie left behind. That's the relief from the burden. That gives me a refreshing energy to continue carrying that burden moving forward. So I really appreciate it. All right. Let's get into talking about this fraud. And we talked about it a little bit earlier here in this hour. And if you missed it, U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson came out this week with 8 new indictments. He calls it the first round of indictments in an ongoing investigation of fraud in the Housing Stabilization Services state Medicaid program. Now, what all that gobbledygook means is that we here in the state of Minnesota, in our stunning benevolence, we're just the most generous people here in Minnesota. Minnesota nice, progressive, we care. We decided that it'd be a good idea to just hand money to people, to nonprofits, to private companies, with the expectation, but not the verification, that they would in turn provide housing services for people who are homeless or who have their housing at threat. So here's a bag of money. Please go help the homeless. And then we walk away. That's what we did. That's what we've been doing. Here's a bag of money. You look trustworthy. Why don't you go help a homeless guy? And amazingly, according to U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson, thousands of people took that bag of money and did something else with it. They did something else. They didn't help the homeless. They did something with it. They didn't do that. And I've got this transcript up here, and I'm going to kind of read through it, and it's a little bit sloppy in terms of its presentation because it's got timestamps here, and I don't want to read all of it to you, so you'll have to bear with me here as I try to talk and scan to find the bits and pieces that are worth chatting about. So, for instance, he said, we were the first state in the nation to make this Medicaid benefit available. At the time, the program was estimated to cost approximately $2.6 million a year. Now, I'm just going to pause there, okay? Because there's so many statements in this press conference that he had this week that are just mind-blowing, that if you go past them too quickly, you're going to become absolutely numb and lose the plot, okay? The program was estimated to cost approximately $2.6 million a year, but it quickly exploded. It grew to more than $100 million a year in Medicaid billing. So, I mean, we thought it was going to be $2, it cost $100. Talk about a cost overrun, right? Who was doing the math on this? Who provided the fiscal note on this program at the Capitol that said, oh, yeah, it's going to cost, 2.6. And then it comes out to 100. That person should be fired. That person shouldn't be working. They probably still are. He goes on to say that within just a few years, hundreds of companies enrolled in the program and began claiming to provide housing stabilization services to thousands of clients throughout the state of Minnesota. Many of these companies operated out of dilapidated storefronts or rundown office buildings that were full of other fraudulent healthcare companies, such as the Griggs Midway building in St. Paul. So again, if you blow past this too fast, the gravity of it won't hit you. I'm going to read it again, and let's pause for effect here. Within just a few years, hundreds of companies enrolled in the program and began claiming to provide housing stabilization services to thousands of clients. Many of these companies operated at dilapidated storefronts or rundown office buildings that were full of other fraudulent healthcare companies. So just pause to consider. This reminds me of Feeding Our Future, right? Like, you remember Feeding Our Future, just the audacity of what people were doing with that money, buying houses and cars and going on vacations with money that was supposed to feed kids. And with no apparent concern whatsoever that they were ever going to get caught. Getting caught wasn't even on their radar, right? Like, it wasn't, because that's the level of audacity that you have to have a building in St. Paul full of other fraudulent healthcare companies, right? Like, they all get together and say, hey, let's all do this in the same place. My Lord, where does that level of audacity come from? What gives you that level of confidence that you're going to be able to do this and keep doing it? That's a question. Who gave them? Who created the environment in which they were comfortable being this audacious? That's where I think we need to pivot to. So far, we've been laser focused on, like, the details of who took what. And in the fraud committee that I sit on in the House of Representatives, we're asking the state agencies, well, how did this happen? What processes do you have in order to combat it? You know, how are we going to stop this? But the real question is, how the hell did this happen in the first place? Where did this population of people who are committing this fraud come from? And who helped them? And who guided them? Who lit the road that they walked down in order to take hundreds of millions of dollars from us? 651-289-4488. My name is Walter Hudson, filling in for Mitch Berg, AM 1280, The Patriot. AM 1280, The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. Sitting in for Mitch Berg, my name is Walter Hudson. Been having a good time, getting the blood pressure up, talking about all this fraud in the state, talking about what happened to Charlie Kirk, talking about the abhorrent response from not just like the left, okay, but like people in positions of status and influence saying abhorrent things that indicate that our social contract has been broken. We live in a disordered society, and that's what we have to fix before we can get back to turning down a temperature and having a conversation. Debate. See, debate, there's a prerequisite to debate, right? Like, I can't have a conversation with you if we can't agree that we're not going to kill each other. Like, that's step one, right? Even in the context of a war, like an actual military conflict, if the two sides are going to come together to parlay, they have to bring white flags, right? Like, there has to be a at least conditional, momentary period of time where it's weapons down and we're going to talk. That's the prerequisite. So don't talk to me about how this is going to be settled through debate. It's not. We have to restore order before we can parlay. So part of that process, certainly in an important yet symbolic fashion, is going to be coming together for these vigils that are happening in Minnesota tonight. There's one in Ely, there's one in Victoria, there's one in Lakeville. I've been getting messages from people telling me about other ones. Apparently there's one in Hudson, Wisconsin. It's like the second one they've had this week that's going on tonight. Specifically the one that I'm going to be at, and that's within the closest range of this listenership, is going to be in Lakeville at Casperson Park at 7 o'clock. And again, I'll just say, you want to be there early. I anticipate this is going to be quite an impressive crowd, and you want to be safe. With everything that implies, you want to be safe. And there will be just so you know, there'll be some folks there that will be ready to assist in the event things get a little rowdy. But you, for your own personal sake, if you have the means, make sure you're safe. Also, tomorrow, Charlie Kirk, of course, his funeral is going to take place. His memorial is going to take place. We've been hearing from people today about public gatherings to watch it live. There's one that is apparently in Minneapolis at the GOP headquarters. They're going to be doing that out my way in St. Michael Cinema. They're on the big screen. We're going to be watching the memorial. And I was just informed by my producer that right here on this air, if you can't make it out to one of these public gatherings, or it's just not logistically something you're capable of doing or comfortable with, you can listen to the memorial live on this air tomorrow at 1 o'clock on AM 1280 The Patriot. So and by the way, there's a camaraderie amongst all of us who are going to be doing that. Whether you're gathering in a public space to view it, whether you're listening to it here on this air, I can already feel the spirit of what that moment is going to be. And I think it's going to be invigorating and inspiring and something that catalyzes, like once the mourning process has completed, the doing process shall begin. And they ain't ready for it. The people responsible for this condition that we find ourselves in are not ready for what happens when we get activated. And I'm not threatening violence. I'm saying you don't. Here's the advantage that we have that you can't have. Okay. Those of you who are out there celebrating Charlie Kirk's death and plotting and organizing to dismantle the United States and openly telling us you're socialist, we have a couple of advantages over you that you will never have. Okay. One of the most important one is the truth, reality, the fact that we are right and you are wrong. And that's not just a piece of rhetoric. That's not my opinion. Okay. This isn't like an editorial. Objectively, we are right. Our worldview and the order that we seek is in alignment with reality. It's in alignment with human nature. It works. What we propose actually works. We have a 250-year-old constitutional republic to prove it. Okay? What you have is a legacy of death and ruin and destruction. The Soviet Union, Mao's China, and indeed, to a previous caller's point, Nazi Germany. I mean, you call us the fascists, you're the ones who are on that side of the spectrum, the authoritarianism, the rights denying. So both in terms of like objective reality and also morally, we are right and you are wrong. That's an advantage that you will never have. You can't have it. It's not available to you. You could, no matter how hard you work to have that advantage, you'll never have it. So that's advantage number one. Advantage number two is we are not cowards. And you are. You are a pack of hyenas. Yeah, you're willing to attack. Yeah, you were willing to shoot Charlie Kirk in the throat. Yeah, you were willing to take pot shots at Donald Trump. Yeah, you're willing to attack ICE officers and burn down police precincts and all this stuff. But you do it like hyenas. You don't do it with boldness and a sense of pride. You do it like scavengers. We, on the other hand, to borrow a phrase from Ben Shapiro, we are lions. Okay? Once you poke this bear, it's over. It's done. It's done. Once you wake up the American populace, and I don't mean just American in terms of citizenship, I mean American in terms of spirit. Okay? Like the folks who actually believe in what America is. You wake us up, you give us a just cause to legally, institutionally, socially come at you, you're done. I think back to school, growing up, elementary school, middle school. You wouldn't know it by listening to me now, but I was a pretty shy kid. Didn't talk a lot. Didn't poke my head above the trench line, so to speak, too much. But I was physically bigger than most, if not all, of my cohort. And so that combination of being gentle and giant was something that on a couple of occasions, coming through school or growing up through school, on a couple of occasions, somebody would think that they had an opportunity there to prove how tough they were because they were going to go against this big guy. And they figured that I wasn't going to present them with much opposition, that they could get away, they could make a name for themselves by coming up against me and bullying me and attacking me and whatever. And, they got away with it for a little while. A little bit. Past a certain point, once I was activated, it was over. Once I was activated, the episode concluded. That was it. And it happened a couple of times. My favorite was in middle school. This was what was this school? Oltman in Cottage Grove, or around that way, middle school. There was a kid who, it was in the lunchroom, and the lunchroom at the time was in the lower level in the basement, and he came at me just unprovoked, calling names, throwing things, raising fists. And past a certain point, once I was activated, I basically sent him up the stairs. Okay? And then after that, he started to run away. Amazingly. It's stunning. And he ran screaming for help to the principal's office. And I coolly, calmly, collectedly followed him there. And so he walks in and he's, help me, this guy's coming at me, yada, yada, yada. And here I come, walk step, in orderly into the door, stand next to him. And the ladies in the office are just standing there stunned. Like, what? Oh, let me get this straight. The guy who just voluntarily and orderly walked into this office is trying to hurt you? Okay, so they go and they get the assistant principal, and the assistant principal comes out, and same thing. This guy's trying to beat me up. I'm the victim, right? And the assistant principal, he looks at me and he's like, "Is this stuff true that he's saying?" And I go, "Yep." And he says, "Well, why did you come here?" And I said, "Well, I knew you were going to get me eventually. I knew you were going to summon me at some point. And I know I'm in the right here, so I might as well just come make my case." And make my case, I did. By time he took me into his office, and by time we were done, he was trying to recruit me for the football team. All right. And I suffered no disciplinary action because I was not the instigator. And so this is my point, is that we're right and they're wrong. We are in the right and they are in the wrong. And that is that is an unassailable position if we have the fortitude to act like it. 651-289-4488. My name is Walter Hudson, sitting in for Mitch Berg, AM 1280, The Patriot. AM 1280, The Patriot, the Northern Alliance Radio Network. Final segment of this program, but stay tuned. We've got NASCAR Kelly filling in for Jack Tomczak here momentarily. And that'll be a good time as well. She'll continue the conversation, carry the torch. My name's Walter Hudson, sitting in for Mitch Berg. I suppose I could... No, I'm not going to give you the number. There's not enough time. There hasn't been enough time today to talk about all the things that need to be talked about. And there are a lot of things we started talking about that we didn't finish talking about. And I'm going to spend this last segment on something that definitely needs to be addressed. And that's this whole Jimmy Kimmel nonsense. Oh my God. Just an absolute clown show. The national conversation that we're having about Jimmy Kimmel. A person who nobody was even watching. Like Ben Shapiro broke down these numbers earlier this week. You realize in the key demographic, I forget exactly what the age range is, but like the nut of the demographic of who advertisers are looking for. I think it's between like 22 and 65 or 20 and 65 or something like that. Do you know how many people were watching Jimmy Kimmel every night? On a national broadcast network, okay? Like, it's free. It's literally free. You don't have to pay for it. You just have to have an antenna, and you can pick this up. He was getting around 250,000 people a night. Now, I know YouTubers who review movies that get more viewers than that on their videos. I mean, that is abysmal. That is abhorrent. He should have been fired just for that. But what's really absurd to me is that now all of a sudden, nobody cared about Jimmy Kimmel, obviously. Nobody cared about him a week ago. Weren't paying any attention to him all, literally. But now he's at the center of the national conversation. He is their cause persona, right? You got people out there saying, we're all Jimmy Kimmel now. You've just created 1 million Jimmy Kimmels. Which, so 1 million Jimmy Kimmels with 0 viewers, apparently, is where that's going. But my God, you've got Barack Obama dusting off the mothballs and tightening him up his tie to come out and talk about how abhorrent it is that Jimmy Kimmel was fired. Now, why was he fired? You probably know. He was fired because he went on his show, I believe it was on Monday, and he made the claim, the abhorrent, reprehensible, debunked, objectively false claim that runs directly against what multiple authorities have told us about the identity and ideology of the shooter of Charlie Kirk. And he made the absurd claim that this is actually a MAGA guy, that Robinson, Kirk's assailant, is actually a MAGA guy. And this is a narrative, if you're online at all, I'm sure you've been seeing it. I think there was some polling that like 25% of people actually believe this, which is just insane. And the reason why is because they're hearing it not just from a lot of people, but from certain people of status and prominence. People like Jimmy Kimmel, right? I mean, if you're one of those 250,000 people who actually watches him, and he tells you that, you think, well, it must be true, because you wouldn't be entitled to have a national platform like this and just say blatantly false things, especially in a context where you're talking about somebody who was just murdered. I mean, the level of misinformation, and by the way, that brings me back to Tim Walz, right? Like, Tim Walz has also gotten on board this cause celeb of Jimmy Kimmel coming out talking about how important the First Amendment is. This from the same guy who just a few months ago, when he was running for vice president, told us that free speech doesn't include misinformation. Now, I don't agree with that, but I'm a big fan of people living by the rules they set, right? Take your own medicine there, Timmy. You told us, and by the way, that was in reference to us saying things that are true, right? It's whatever he decides is misinformation shouldn't be protected speech. That's Walz's position. Meanwhile, we're over here dealing with somebody who lied about the death of Charlie Kirk to a national audience when he either knew or should have known that what he was saying was not true at all. And so what happened is after he did that, there was outrage, there were complaints, and a lot of them came in at the local level, right? Like, people would call their local station and say, this is abhorrent, I can't believe this is on the air, I don't want to watch this guy anymore. And so, reacting to market forces, they responded. And a couple of these networks of local affiliates decided that they were going to preempt Kimmel going forward. And that got up to ABC, and ABC said, this is a problem. They brought Kimmel in, and they said, listen, dude, you're going to have to apologize. And he told them to go to hell. He told them, no, I'm not going to apologize. In fact, I'm going to go on the air tonight. I'm going to double down on the lie, and I'm going to rag you over the coals, my bosses, and call you out for telling me that I should apologize. Now, the audacity to do that is quite astounding, but that's what he did. And their response was, "Okay, guy, well, here's a cardboard box. Pack up your knickknacks and get the hell out." That's, of course, exactly what should have happened. And it's being portrayed in the media and by the left and by Democrats and all the way up to a former president of the United States and the governor of this state as some sort of massive attack against freedom of speech. It was an attack against free speech to fire a late-night comedian for saying an abhorrent lie that goes against documented facts established by investigatory authorities. This is the level of gaslighting that we're dealing with here. And so, I started the show, and there's been this consistent theme throughout the show of talking about the need for order in our society and having an ordered society, and that you can't actually have debate without first establishing order. This is part of that. This is another manifestation of that. If I'm dealing with a political party whose former president of the United States is willing to lie to my face, there is no order, and there can be no debate. We got to reorder our society. Thanks for listening. AM 1280 The Patriot. Walter Hudson sitting in for Mitch Berg. We'll talk to you later.